One of the darkest and scariest things Arsenal X has ever been a part of. Arsenal X had a very specialized strike craft that would use a unique set of cannons to saw enemy planes in half. During World War I and World War II, and even possible of World War III, Arsenal X has found ways to completely cut enemy craft from the sky using a small burst of ammunition in areas that caused the plane to break apart. Arsenal X had another one called the Precision Strike Fighter, and what this one would do is that it would have small explosive projectiles that would line different parts of the craft, and they would be reloadable. And what it would do is that it would fly underneath a enemy or a wing and fire a small round of explosive charges, completely sawing through certain parts of the plane or causing catastrophic damage to enemies or other electronic equipment to the pilots themselves. This little plane was super useful in attacking high priority targets or causing chaos in large groups of bombers. This was pretty much a craft that would cause people with tryptophobia to panic. It was a plane pockmarked with holes. Everywhere you could find a flat surface was a hole. The entire purpose of this plane was to launch small explosive charges and break apart planes or even ground targets. It was a plane out of your worst nightmare. They would often call this thing the Beast of 10,000 Eyes, because before the projectiles that would be fired were fired, they would have a black or red or yellow or blue or green central cone, surrounded by a white exterior plate covered with red wiring. Other variants would be a black-looking plate with white center looking like an eyeball, continuing with the red wiring. Depending on the different color of the cone would be different munitions for different purposes. In fact, this plane was said to be something that looked like it came from the abyss. Arsenal X greatly enjoyed causing terror in countries and communities because this plane, whenever it was seen, would cause people to fall into fits of panic and nearly uncontrollable fear. The plane was abyssal black, with two sensory eyes at the front of the craft, and what looked like a terrifying glowing smile as the engine intake. Air would be superheated as soon as the engine turned on, and that is what would cause the glowing, creepy smile of the craft. Arsenal X very quickly took advantage of this and tried to make this thing look as evil and terrifying as possible. This plane was called the Nightstalker. It was capable of taking down entire groups of bombers because of its large amount of ordnances it was able to carry. It had the hypervelocity cannons underneath, two of them, the eyes of the craft allowing it to partake in dogfights outside of its normal ordnances and have a way to attack ground targets. This was a terrifying beast, and only those who were slightly unhinged were allowed to pilot it, because of the evil aura it would give off. Arsenal X usually doesn't go for creepy things like this, but they knew that they had to do something to strike fear into the enemy. So they made something as horrible and evil looking as possible, and it worked spectacularly. It was said that anyone who looked upon the craft for too long would be driven into a state of madness, and if you ever looked into the sensory eyes of the craft, that you would feel your body start to burn. People would be rushed to the hospital with psychosis and insanity and severe burns on the body. This was a craft that looked like it came from Hades itself. The entire purpose of this craft was to be as otherworldly and terrifying as possible, and was one of the most evil things that Arsenal X has ever made to date. Even to this day, if anyone wishes to gaze upon this craft, even photos of it can drive a person insane, and you are only allowed to look at it if you pass a psychological test and sign waivers. In fact, one of the very scary parts about this, guys, is that people are often terrorized at night with night terrors of this terrifying beast of a plane coming to stalk them. This is a terrifying plane, and people would often have to go through psychological treatment to help them cope with the night terrors that would be associated with looking at this craft. Anyone who shows a positive connection to the beast and wants to be its pilot is immediately assimilated and sent through a rigorous program so that way they can pilot a modern variant of this terrifying beast. Yes, a modern variant. Arsenal X was so taken aback by the psychological horror that this crazy craft would unleash upon its enemies that they made a new variant that was completed in 2023. This is something that would cause even your guardian angels to shudder. A terrifying abyssal black plane that has thousands of eyes that are capable of bringing forth unimaginable amounts of damage to countries and communities. It is said that this modern variant of the craft is destruction itself times 1,000-fold. This craft was capable of enhancing the abilities of the pilot and allowed for time to slow almost in a way so that way the pilot knew exactly when to fire the charges. This craft was actually one of the first to use a type of artificial intelligence, and you can see why that craft seems to be cursed. They took the brain cells of a wolf and a peregrine falcon and merged them together to see if they could make something that could fly this plane. It was said that the pilots who were designated to fly this would never be able to go back to a normal life because of the predatory nature of being bonded to the craft. It was said that they would not want to be separated from the craft, and if they would be thrown into a fit of uncontrollable rage, and they would kill anyone and everyone who stood in their way of them being able to be with the Nightstalker. So, a fighter craft could be cut completely in half with this plane, and let's see. Oh yeah, sorry. That was less than 2 feet from it. A bomber would have its wings sheared off in seconds because of the special ammunition emitters that would cut through the craft instantaneously. This thing could cut through 20 bombers before having to retreat. It was a very awkwardly shaped aircraft that would be able to go in for a couple runs and would have to quickly escape to reload. But in this short time it attacked, many planes would fall from the sky, as other planes would fly away screaming at the tops of their lungs, trying to drown out the insanity that was calling their name. In case the craft was somehow shot down or damaged beyond repair, a specialized hyperthermite self-destruction system would activate once the pilot was ejected, and that would cause the plane to burn much like a thermite would, completely destroying all evidence of it being there. A terrifying and fiery end if the craft was ever compromised. Arsenal X entered the dark age of war when they created the Nightstalker. No one ever says the name without getting a sense of terror that flows through their body like a wave. The Nightstalker is a beast of unparalleled destruction, and is capable of unimaginable evil if put in the wrong hands. This is why Arsenal X themselves even fear what they have made, and they do everything and anything they can to make sure that it has a pilot, and that both the pilot and the plane are both well taken care of and isolated, and are only sent out when absolutely needed. Arsenal X, at the earlier stages of World War I and World War II, would often try to find more pacifist ways of disabling the enemy via sabotage or espionage or helping other countries fight off the evil that was plaguing this world. But unfortunately, after the latter end of World War II, Arsenal X was forced to make things that were to kill. So now, unfortunately, Arsenal X has to play for keeps, and they have to become the terrifying predators that they are known as Arsenal X now today. You only get 2 weeks to work at the same base that the Nightstalker is housed at because of its passive aura. If you go past 2 weeks or a fortnight, you would start feeling symptoms of psychosis and insanity. This would be called the fortnight fall. After a fortnight, you were forced to evacuate and swap out with your replacement, lest you lose yourself to the terrifying effects of the beast of the 10,000 eyes, the Nightstalker. Let me try that again. This would be called the fortnight fall. After a fortnight, you were forced to evacuate and swap out with your replacement, lest you lose yourself to the terrifying effects of the beast of 10,000 eyes, the Nightstalker. It is said that Sabin may be the only one who can pilot this plane and not succumb to the effects that it has on others, only by God's divine grace. Will he see this before he goes to the mountains on his mission in my book? Or will he see this after? Or will he even see it during? Nobody knows. All they know is that the Nightstalker is always watching. His eyes are on you. All 10,000 of them are looking at your soul. This is one of the few images that was able to be captured by a camera, and only this small portion has been shown to not drive people insane. But looking at it, you can already feel a sense of severe, uncomfortable feelings. This craft would look at you, all 10,000 of its eyes, waiting to take you from the skies, waiting to bury you. Arsenal X never wanted to create this terrifying monster of a plane, but they were forced to, because a greater evil was trying to overtake the world, both in World War I and World War II. This plane is as mysterious and effective as the SR-71 Blackbird, but is more deadly than 10,000 nuclear bombs put together. This is the Nightstalker. This is judgment. We are many. We are judgment. We are one. We are Arsenal X.